A baker found a bleeding boy behind her shop and hid him for 6 days. Then black SUVs flooded her quiet street. A mafia boss stepping out with 50 men behind him. He wasn't there to threaten her. He was there to thank her. Because that boy was his son, and she just saved the only thing his dangerous world couldn't protect. The thunder came first, then the blood. Mira-chan wiped down the last table in her bakery, humming along to the oldies station playing from the kitchen radio. It was 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes past closing time, and the storm outside had turned Main Street into a ghost town. She didn't mind. After 16 years of running Sweet Haven Bakery in the heart of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, she'd learned to love these quiet moments when the ovens cooled and the world felt small and safe. She grabbed the trash bag from behind the counter, heavy with the day's waste, and pushed through the back door into the alley. The rain hit her immediately, cold and aggressive, soaking through her cardigan in seconds. She hurried toward the dumpster, her sneakers splashing through puddles that reflected the stuttering glow of the single street lamp. That's when she heard it. A wet, rattling cough that definitely wasn't the wind. Mira froze, her grip tightening on the trash bag. Hello. Silence. Then another cough, weaker this time, coming from behind the dumpster. Every instinct screamed at her to go back inside, lock the door and call the police. This was exactly how horror movies started. But Mira had never been good at listening to the sensible voice in her head, the same voice that had told her not to quit her accounting job to open a bakery, not to move to a small town where she knew no one, not to trust that the universe sometimes put people in your path for a reason. She set down the trash bag and edged around the dumpster. A boy was crumpled against the brick wall, barely conscious, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. He couldn't have been more than 17. His white shirt, or what used to be white, was torn and soaked with a mixture of rain and blood. A gash across his side seeped red despite the makeshift bandage he'd fashioned from what looked like a torn sleeve. His face was a palette of bruises, purple along his jaw, yellow-green around his left eye, and a fresh split across his bottom lip. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold when they fluttered open. They were dark brown, young, and absolutely terrified. Please, his voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and desperate. Don't call anyone. Please. I'm begging you. Myra's heart hammered. You need a hospital. No. The word came out sharp, panicked. He tried to push himself up and immediately gasped in pain, collapsing back against the wall. No hospital. No police. They'll find me. Who will find you? He shook his head, eyes squeezing shut. I can't tell you. It'll get you killed too. The rational part of Myra's brain was screaming now. This was serious. This was dangerous. This was absolutely none of her business. But there was something in his voice. Raw, genuine fear that reminded her of a cornered animal. And beneath the blood and bruises, she could see he was just a kid. A terrified kid who'd probably look like any other teenager if he wasn't bleeding out in her alley. Can you walk? She asked quietly. His eyes opened again, confused, hopeful. What? I said, can you walk? Or do I need to carry you? You're going to help me. I'm apparently going to regret this, Mira muttered, already moving to his side. But yes. Now come on before I change my mind or we both drown out here. She slipped her arm under his shoulders. He was lighter than she expected, all lean muscle and teenage metabolism, but he still groaned as she helped him to his feet. They stumbled together toward the back door, his weight pressing against her side, both of them soaked to the bone. The alley was empty. Thank God for small mercies, and within seconds they were inside. Mira locked the door behind them, then half-carried, half-dragged the boy up the narrow staircase to her apartment above the bakery. Her living space was modest. A studio with a kitchenette, a worn couch that doubled as her reading spot, and a bed tucked in the corner behind a folding screen. She deposited him on the couch, where he immediately slumped against the cushions, breathing hard. Don't move, Mira ordered, rushing to the bathroom. She grabbed her first aid kit from under the sink. A metal box she'd kept since her Girl Scout days and had thankfully updated over the years. When she returned, the boy's eyes were closed, but his chest was still rising and falling. "Stay with me," she said, kneeling beside him. "What's your name?" "Eli," he whispered without opening his eyes. "Okay, Eli. I'm Mira. I'm going to look at your side now. This is going to hurt." She carefully lifted his ruined shirt. The gash was about 4 inches long, deep enough to need stitches but not deep enough to have hit anything vital, she hoped. The blood had slowed to a steady seep. She cleaned it with antiseptic, and Eli's entire body went rigid, but he didn't cry out. His jaw just clenched so hard she could see the muscle jumping beneath his bruised skin. As she worked, Mira noticed other things. His hands, despite the dirt and blood, had clean manicured nails. His jeans were expensive, dark denim with subtle designer stitching. And that watch on his wrist, partially hidden by his torn sleeve, was definitely a Rolex. She'd seen enough of them on her father's wrist before he passed to recognize one. "You're not from around here," she said, applying butterfly bandages to hold the wound closed. "No. Where are you from?" "Somewhere else." Mira taped gauze over the bandages and sat back. "You know, if you want me to keep helping you, you could at least give me something. Anything." Eli's eyes opened, and for the first time she saw something other than fear in them, guilt. "I'm from Philadelphia. My father. He has enemies. A lot of them. Someone tried to kill me 3 days ago. I barely got out." "Why would someone want to kill a kid?" His laugh was bitter and painful. "Because I'm not just a kid. I'm leverage. I'm a target. He stopped, looking away. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come here. I was just trying to find somewhere, anywhere. And then I saw your bakery light on and I thought maybe I could rest for a minute. And then the pain got too bad and—" "Hey," Mira touched his shoulder gently. "It's okay. You're here now. You're safe." "No one's safe around me." "Well, lucky for you, I'm terrible at following good advice." She stood and grabbed a blanket from her bed, draping it over him. "You need rest. That fever you're running isn't going to break until you sleep." Eli looked up at her with an expression that was decades too old for his young face. "Why are you doing this?" Mira thought about that for a moment. Why was she? She barely knew this kid. He was clearly mixed up in something dangerous. The smart thing would be to call the police, let them handle it, wash her hands of the whole situation. But when she looked at him, this scared, wounded boy who'd probably grown up too fast in a world she couldn't imagine, she thought about all the times in her own life when someone had helped her when they didn't have to. The neighbor who'd driven her to the hospital when she broke her arm at 12. The teacher who'd paid for her college application fees. The bank manager who'd taken a chance on her bakery loan. "Because someone should," she said simply. "Now get some sleep. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Eli's eyes were already drifting closed, exhaustion and fever pulling him under. "Thank you," he murmured. "Thank you, Mira." She turned off all but one small lamp and retreated to her bed behind the screen. But sleep didn't come easily. She lay there in the darkness, listening to Eli's ragged breathing, wondering what exactly she just invited into her life. Outside, the storm raged on, and somewhere in the night, people were looking for the boy on her couch. Mira had 6 days before her world turned upside down. She just didn't know it yet. Morning light crept through the curtains, soft and apologetic after the violence of last night's storm. Mira woke to the smell of her own bakery, bread, cinnamon, vanilla. The scents that had seeped into every corner of the building over 16 years. For a blissful moment, she forgot about the boy on her couch. Then she heard him cough. She pushed aside the folding screen and found Eli awake, sitting upright with obvious effort, his face pale but alert. The fever had broken sometime during the night, leaving his hair damp with sweat and his eyes clearer than they'd been in the alley. "How do you feel?" Mira asked, moving to check his bandages. "Like I got hit by a truck," he managed a weak smile. "But better than yesterday. Thank you for everything." The wound looked better too, No signs of infection, the bleeding completely stopped. Mira replaced the gauze with practiced efficiency, trying not to notice how Eli watched her with careful, assessing eyes. "You've done this before," he observed. "My dad was a diabetic." Lots of practice with medical supplies. She sealed the bandage with tape. "You hungry? I need to go downstairs and start baking anyway. Might as well make you something. I don't want to be any trouble." Too late for that, but she said it kindly, with a slight smile that made him relax. Downstairs, Mira fell into her morning routine. But her mind stayed upstairs with Eli. She mixed dough for sourdough loaves, shaped croissants, and prepped the display case, all while trying to figure out what to do. The boy was clearly in danger. Real danger. But from whom? And why? She made him scrambled eggs, toast, and hot tea, simple, easy on the stomach, and brought it upstairs on a tray. He accepted it with both hands, and she noticed again how polite he was, the way he said thank you, and waited for her to sit before he started eating. "You said you're from Philadelphia," Mira began, settling into the armchair across from him. "That's 4 hours from here. How did you end up in Millbrook?" Eli chewed slowly, considering his answer. "I stole a car. Drove until it ran out of gas about a mile outside town. Walked the rest of the way." "You stole a car?" "It was my father's car, technically." He set down his fork. "Look, I know you deserve answers. But the less you know, the safer you are. That's not me being dramatic. That's just the truth. I think we're past the point of safe the moment I brought you inside." He looked down at his plate, guilt washing over his features. "You're probably right. I'm sorry. I should leave as soon as." "You're not going anywhere with that wound." Myra's voice was firm. "At least not today. But I need something, Eli. Anything. Because right now, I'm harboring a teenage car thief who may or may not have the mob after him, and I'd really like to know which scenario I'm dealing with." Eli was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "My father is important, powerful. He made a lot of money in businesses that aren't exactly legal. And when you have that kind of power, people want to take it from you. So someone went after you to hurt your father. Or to eliminate his heir." Eli's jaw tightened. "I'm his only son. If I'm dead, everything changes. The power structure shifts. New opportunities open up for people who've been waiting." Mira felt a chill run down her spine. "How old are you?" 17. "Jesus," she rubbed her face with both hands. "You're just a kid." "I stopped being just a kid when I was 12 and watched my father's men beat someone unconscious in our living room." The words came out flat, matter-of-fact, and somehow that made them worse. "I know what my father is. I know what I am. That's why I ran." "What do you mean?" Eli looked at her then, and she saw something broken beneath his composed exterior. "I'm supposed to take over one day, follow in his footsteps. But I don't want that life. I never wanted it. So when someone tried to kill me, I thought, maybe this is my chance. Maybe I could disappear, start over somewhere else, be someone else." "Running away doesn't make you someone else," Mira said gently. "It just makes you someone running. Better than being someone dead." She couldn't argue with that logic. Mira spent the rest of the morning in the bakery, serving the usual Tuesday customers, Mrs. Patterson with her standing order of blueberry muffins, Tom Rodriguez picking up bread for his restaurant, the high school girls who came in for after-school cookies. Normal. Routine. Safe. Except it wasn't. Around 2 p.m., a man walked in. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive and out of place in her small-town bakery. He didn't look at the pastries. He looked at everything else: the layout, the exits, the staircase partially visible through the kitchen door. "Help you?" Mira asked, keeping her voice light despite her racing heart. The man approached the counter and pulled out his phone. He showed her a photo, a school picture of a boy with neat hair, a shy smile, and Eli's unmistakable dark eyes. "Have you seen this kid? He's missing. His family is very worried." Mira forced herself to study the photo like she'd never seen the face before. She even squinted a little as if trying to help. No, sorry. Doesn't look familiar. Have you tried the police? His family prefers to handle this privately. The man's eyes were cold, evaluating. There's a reward. Substantial. If you see him, call this number. He placed a business card on the counter. Plain white, just a phone number printed in black ink. Sure. I'll keep an eye out. The man lingered another moment, his gaze sweeping the bakery one more time before he nodded and left. Through the window, Mira watched him pull out his phone and make a call, his eyes scanning the street as he talked. She waited until he disappeared around the corner, then flipped the shop sign to closed and locked the door. Upstairs, Eli was standing by the window, carefully hidden behind the curtain but clearly watching the street below. They're here, he said quietly. They found me. Myra's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. Not yet, they haven't. And they won't. We just need to be careful. You should tell me to leave. I should, Mira agreed. But I'm not going to. Eli turned to look at her, confusion and something like hope warring in his expression. Why? Because I don't trust those men to let you live if you walk out that door. She moved to the window and looked down at her quiet street, suddenly feeling like a stranger in her own town. We'll figure this out. Together. But first you need to tell me everything. And I mean everything. Outside, another black car rolled slowly past the bakery. The hunters were circling. And Mira had just made herself part of the prey. Over the next 48 hours, Millbrook transformed from a sleepy town into a spider's web. And Mira could feel the silk tightening around her. The men came in waves, never the same face twice, but always with the same energy, cold, professional, searching. They didn't break down doors or threaten anyone. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was a threat. On Wednesday morning, Mira opened the bakery as usual, forcing normalcy into every movement. She smiled at customers, packaged pastries, made small talk about the weather. But her eyes tracked every person who walked past her window, every car that slowed down, every stranger who lingered too long on the sidewalk. Around 10 a.m., Mrs. Patterson came in for her weekly coffee and scone, her eyes bright with gossip. Did you hear? She whispered, leaning across the counter conspiratorially. There are strange men all over town asking questions. Carol at the diner said 2 of them came in yesterday showing pictures of some boy, offering money for information. Myra's stomach clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. Really? What kind of money? $10,000. Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened with the number. Can you imagine? For just seeing some kid? Carol said they looked like government agents or something. Very serious. Very well dressed. Probably a runaway from a rich family, Mira suggested, handing over the scone. Parents desperate to get their child back. That's what I thought too. But Karen, you know Karen from the library. She said one of them came in and the way he looked around like he was memorizing exits made her skin crawl. She said they didn't feel like worried parents. They felt dangerous. People always seem dangerous when they're strangers in a small town. Mrs. Patterson nodded, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. I suppose. Still, I'm keeping my doors locked until they leave. Something doesn't feel right. After she left, Mira closed her eyes and took a slow breath. The entire town was on alert now, which meant more eyes watching, more people paying attention. She needed to be more careful. Upstairs, Eli had barely moved from the couch. His wound was healing well, but the psychological toll of being hunted was etched into every line of his body. He sat rigid, listening to every sound from the street below, flinching at car doors and raised voices. You should eat something, Mira said during her lunch break, bringing up a sandwich and soup. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. You need strength if... She stopped herself. If I need to run, Eli finished quietly. You can say it. Mira sat down across from him. In the natural light from the window, she could see he was actually quite handsome beneath the fading bruises. High cheekbones, intelligent eyes, the kind of face that would turn heads in a few years. But right now he just looked young and scared. "How many men does your father have?" she asked. Eli picked at his sandwich. "Enough. But the people looking for me aren't my father's men. They're the enemies. If my father knew where I was, he'd have already come for me himself. With an army, I'm guessing." With everything, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. "My father doesn't do anything halfway. It's one of his more terrifying qualities." The afternoon brought more visitors to the bakery, but among the regular customers, Mira spotted two more searchers. One was a woman this time, brunette, professional, wearing designer sunglasses even though it was overcast. She bought a coffee and a muffin, but her eyes never stopped moving, cataloging every detail. The other was a younger man, maybe late 20s, who came in just before closing time. He ordered nothing, just stood near the door and looked around with barely concealed impatience. "We're closing soon," Mira said pointedly. "That's fine. Just waiting for someone," but his hand kept moving to his jacket pocket, and Mira caught a glimpse of something metallic. A gun. Her blood went cold. "Sir, I need to ask you to wait outside." "I'm not causing trouble." His smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Nice place you have here. You run it alone." "My husband helps," Mira lied smoothly. "He's in the back. 6'4", former Marine. Very protective." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, reassessing. "Lucky you. These days a woman alone. Lots of dangerous people out there." "I'll keep that in mind." He lingered another minute, just long enough to make his point, then left. Through the window, Mira watched him make a phone call, his eyes fixed on her building. She locked the door with trembling hands and pulled down all the shades, something she'd never done in 16 years of business. Then she grabbed her phone and climbed the stairs. Eli was already standing, having heard the entire exchange through the thin floor. "We need to leave," he said urgently. "Right now. They're not just searching anymore, they're watching." That man was marking the location. "Leave and go where?" "If they're watching the building, they'll see us." "Then I'll go alone." "Let them away from you." "Stop." Mira held up her hand. "Nobody's going anywhere tonight. It's almost dark, you're still injured, and we don't know how many of them are out there." "Mira, you don't understand. These people don't just kill their targets. They eliminate witnesses. Anyone who helped me. Anyone who saw me." "I understand perfectly." Her voice was calm, even though her heart was hammering. "Which is why we're going to be smart about this. We stay quiet tonight. No lights upstairs. No noise. Tomorrow morning I open the bakery like normal. We buy ourselves time to make a real plan." Eli looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion and pain won out. He sank back onto the couch, defeated. That night they sat in darkness, listening to the sounds of the street below. Cars cruised past every 20 minutes, too often to be coincidence, too regular to be random. Mira pulled the curtains tight and turned off her phone, paranoid that somehow they could track it. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the alley behind the building. Slow, deliberate, testing the back door. Her breath caught. Beside her, Eli had gone absolutely still, his hand gripping the couch cushion so hard his knuckles were white. The footsteps paused at the door. The handle rattled once, twice. Then nothing. They waited in silence for 10 more minutes before the footsteps retreated. "They're mapping the building," Eli whispered. "Finding all the exits, all the weak points. Tomorrow or the next day they'll come inside." Myra's mouth was dry. "Then we have less time than I thought." "I'm sorry," Eli said into the darkness. "I'm so sorry I brought this to your door." "Don't be sorry yet." Mira tried to sound braver than she felt. "Be sorry if we don't make it out of this. Until then we fight smart." But as she lay in her bed later, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of the building, Mira wondered if being smart would be enough. Outside, the hunters were tightening the noose. And somewhere in Philadelphia, a powerful man was about to discover exactly where his missing son had been hiding. Thursday passed in suffocating tension. Mira opened the bakery, went through the motions, served customers with a smile that felt painted on. The searchers had become part of the landscape now, always one or two visible on the street, watching, waiting. The town had noticed. People whispered. Business slowed. Everyone could feel the pressure building, like air before a thunderstorm. By evening, Myra's nerves were frayed to breaking. She closed early again, claiming a migraine to the few customers who asked. Upstairs, Eli had barely moved from his position by the window, watching the watchers, his body coiled with anxiety. "You need to eat," Mira said, setting down a plate of pasta. "I can't. Eli. I said I can't." His voice cracked and he immediately looked ashamed. I'm sorry, I can't." Mira softened. "It's okay. Just try to rest." But rest wasn't coming for either of them. Around 2 a.m., Mira woke to a sound that made her blood freeze, ragged, gasping breaths, like someone drowning on dry land. She threw off her covers and found Eli sitting bolt upright on the couch, his eyes wide and unseeing, his chest heaving. "Eli!" She rushed to him, kneeling in front of the couch. "Eli, what's wrong?" He didn't seem to hear her. His hands were shaking violently, clutching at his shirt, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. Panic attack. She recognized the signs from her own father's episodes after her mother died. "Eli, look at me." She took his hands in hers, squeezing firmly. "You're safe. You're here with me. You're safe." No, the word came out strangled. No, no one's safe. They're coming. They're going to kill me. They're going to kill you. Oh God, they're going to kill you because of me. Hey, stop. Mira moved to sit beside him, keeping hold of his hands. "Breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Come on." She demonstrated, breathing slowly and deliberately, and after a moment Eli tried to follow. His breath hitched and stuttered, but gradually, painfully, it began to even out. "That's it. You're doing great. Keep breathing." It took nearly 10 minutes before his breathing normalized, before the wild panic in his eyes receded enough for him to see her clearly. When it did, shame flooded his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered hoarsely. "I'm so sorry. Don't apologize for being scared. Being scared means you're smart." She released his hands but stayed close. "Talk to me. What happened?" Eli's jaw worked, like he was trying to find words for something unspeakable. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. 3 days before I ran, I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. 2 of my father's associates, men I've known since I was a kid, talking about how easy it would be. How they'd make it look like a rival family did it. How my father would be so consumed with revenge that he wouldn't notice them consolidating power until it was too late. They were planning to kill you. They were planning to make me disappear. Eli's hands clenched into fists on his knees. Not just kill me, erase me. Like I never existed. And the worst part? I couldn't tell my father. Because I didn't know who else was involved. His driver? His bodyguard? The woman who's made my breakfast every morning for 10 years? Any of them could be part of it. All of them could be part of it. Mira felt sick. "So you ran." "I took the first opportunity one could. My father had a meeting in the city, most of his security went with him, and I just grabbed keys and drove. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anything except the clothes I was wearing and the certainty that if I stayed, I'd be dead within a week." He looked at her, and his eyes were decades too old. "Do you understand now? The people looking for me, they don't just want to find me. They want to finish what they started. And they can't leave witnesses. They can't leave anyone who might tell my father that his son was here, was alive, was asking for help. Your father doesn't know you're missing. He knows by now. But he thinks I'm already dead. The traitors would have made sure of that, planted evidence, created a story. He's probably planning a funeral right now." Eli's voice broke. "And when he finds out the truth, when he finds out someone in his own organization tried to kill his son, he's going to burn the world down to find them. Everyone connected to this, everyone who even might be involved, they'll all die. Including you, if he thinks you kept me from him. The weight of those words settled over the room like ash. Mira tried to process it, this impossible situation where helping meant danger and not helping meant death. So what do we do? She asked quietly. I don't know. Eli's shoulders sagged. I've been trying to figure that out for 6 days. Run far enough that they never find me? Impossible. My father's reach is too long. Turn myself in? I wouldn't make it through the front door alive. Call my father directly? If the traitors are monitoring his communications, they'd intercept it and be here within hours. There has to be something. There isn't. The words exploded out of him. Don't you see? I'm trapped. We're both trapped. The only way you stay alive is if I leave, and the only way I stay alive is if I hide. But they're already here, already watching, and it's only a matter of time before they figure out exactly where I am and… Stop! Myra's voice cut through his spiral. Just stop. You're spiraling, and spiraling doesn't help anything. How are you so calm? I'm not calm. I'm terrified. She turned to face him fully. But fear doesn't help us think clearly. And right now we need to think clearly. Eli looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language. You should hate me. You should throw me out and call those men yourself and collect the reward and forget any of this ever happened. Should I? Probably. Mira managed a weak smile. But I'm stubborn. Ask anyone in town. It's my defining characteristic. Once I commit to something, I see it through. And I committed to keeping you safe. Why? The question came out raw, desperate. Why would you risk everything for someone you don't even know? Mira thought about her father, who'd spent his last days in a hospital bed, holding her hand and telling her that the only thing that mattered in life was how you treated people when they needed you most. She thought about all the times she'd needed someone and they'd been there. Because someone should, she said simply. And right now that someone is me. Tears suddenly spilled down Eli's cheeks, the first real emotion beyond fear that she'd seen from him. He tried to wipe them away angrily, embarrassed, but they kept coming. I don't want to die, he whispered. I don't want you to die. I'm 17 and I just want to be a normal kid who worries about college applications and asking girls to prom, not about which of my father's men are planning to put a bullet in my head. Mira pulled him into a hug, and he broke completely, his body shaking with silent sobs. She held him like she'd held her father in his final days, like she'd wanted someone to hold her when she'd been alone and grieving, and she made a promise to the universe. They would get through this. Somehow. Outside, a car engine hummed to life, idling on the street below. The watchers weren't sleeping either. And somewhere in the darkness, wheels were already in motion that would bring this all to a head sooner than either of them could imagine. By tomorrow night, the world would know exactly where Eli Voss had been hiding. And his father would be coming. Friday morning broke cold and gray. The kind of weather that felt like a warning. Mira had barely slept, and from the dark circles under Eli's eyes, neither had he. They moved around each other quietly, both feeling the weight of something inevitable approaching. I need to open the bakery, Mira said, tying her apron. If I don't, it'll look suspicious. Eli nodded, but his eyes were distant. They're going to make their move soon. I can feel it. Then we stay alert. And if anything happens… The back staircase, Eli interrupted. It leads to the alley. If you scream, I run. Don't argue, just promise me. Mira wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. Okay. I promise. The morning started normally enough. The usual customers trickled in, Tom Rodriguez for his restaurant bread, a few early bird retirees for coffee and conversation. But Mira noticed something. The watchers had multiplied. Where there had been 1 or 2 before, now there were at least 5 visible from her window. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. Around 10:30, the bell above the door chimed, and Mira looked up to see Sheriff Dawson walk in. Her heart sank. Bill Dawson had been sheriff for 20 years, and he wasn't a man who made casual social calls. Mira, he nodded. his weathered face serious. Got a minute? Of course, Sheriff. Coffee? Please. She poured him a cup, her hands remarkably steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. He took a long sip before speaking. Strange things happening in Millbrook this week. Strange men asking questions. Strange cars on our streets. You noticed? Hard not to. Any of them come in here. Mira met his eyes. A few. Showing pictures of some missing boy. Offering reward money. Dawson nodded slowly. Thought so. They've been to every business in town. Thing is, Mira, these men aren't cops. Aren't FBI. Aren't any kind of official law enforcement I can identify. Which makes me nervous. What are you saying, Sheriff? I'm saying that whatever they're looking for, whatever's happening, I want my town and my people out of it. He set down his cup. If you know something, anything, now's the time to tell me. Myra's mind raced. Could she trust him? Would involving the police help Eli or sign his death warrant? Before she could answer, the street outside erupted in sound. Engines. Multiple engines, powerful and rumbling, coming from both directions. Dawson's head snapped toward the window. What the hell? Black SUVs rolled down Main Street like a funeral procession. 6 of them, moving in perfect formation. They weren't speeding, weren't announcing themselves with sirens, but somehow that made them more terrifying. People on the sidewalk stopped and stared. Shopkeepers came to their windows. The entire town seemed to hold its breath. The vehicles stopped in front of Myra's bakery, forming a semicircle that blocked off the street. Doors opened in unison and men emerged, at least 50 of them, all wearing dark suits, all moving with military precision. They weren't police or FBI. They were something else entirely. Jesus Christ, Dawson breathed, his hand moving instinctively to his sidearm. Then the lead SUV's back door opened, and a man stepped out. Myra's breath caught. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with salt and pepper hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from granite. His charcoal suit probably cost more than her car. But it was his eyes that made Myra's stomach drop. They were the same dark brown as Eli's, but older, harder, carrying the weight of 1,000 terrible decisions. Adrian Voss. It had to be. He surveyed the street with the casual authority of someone who owned everything he looked at, then turned his attention to the bakery. Around him his men took positions, some facing outward watching the street, others moving to secure the perimeter. It was a military operation conducted in broad daylight on a quiet Pennsylvania street. Sheriff, one of the suited men approached Dawson, who'd stepped outside with Mira following. We need you to clear the area. This is a private family matter. Private family matter? Dawson's voice rose. You just invaded my town with the private army. I've got jurisdiction here. Not over this, the man's voice was polite but final. He handed Dawson a business card. Any questions or concerns can be directed to our legal team. For now, please step back. Adrian Voss walked forward, and the crowd of suits parted for him like water. He didn't look at the sheriff, didn't acknowledge the growing crowd of shocked townspeople. His eyes were fixed on the bakery door with laser focus. He stopped 3 feet away from Mira, and up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the desperate relief barely contained beneath his composed exterior. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. My son is here. It wasn't a question. Myra's mouth went dry. She should lie, should deny everything, but something in his eyes, a father's desperate hope, stopped her. Before she could respond, the bakery door opened and Eli stepped out. The street fell absolutely silent. Father and son stared at each other across 6 feet of sidewalk that might as well have been an ocean. Eli's face was a mixture of fear, anger, and something that might have been longing. Adrian's carefully constructed composure cracked, and for just a moment, Mira saw past the Mafia boss to the terrified father beneath. Eli, Adrian's voice broke on the name. Thank God. Thank God you're alive. He took a step forward, arms beginning to open for an embrace, but Eli stepped back, his body rigid. Don't the single word cut through the air. Don't you dare act like you care. Adrian stopped as if he'd been shot. What? You didn't even notice I was gone. Eli's voice shook with fury and hurt. 3 days, Dad. I was missing for 3 days before you even started looking. Too busy with your meetings, your business, your empire to notice your son had disappeared. Eli, that's not. Someone tried to kill me. The words exploded out. Someone in your organization, someone you trust, tried to murder me. And I couldn't even tell you because I didn't know who else was involved. The revelation hit Adrian like a physical blow. His face went pale, then red, rage and horror warring across his features. Around them, his men shifted uncomfortably, hands moving toward weapons, each one suddenly suspect. Who? Adrian's voice was deadly quiet now, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. Give me a name. I don't have a name. I have suspicions, theories, but no proof. That's why I ran. Eli's hands clenched into fists. And you know what the worst part is? If I'd stayed and told you, you probably would have accused me of paranoia, of being weak, of not being tough enough for this life you forced on me. That's not true, isn't it? Eli's laugh was bitter. When have you ever listened to me? When have you ever asked what I wanted? Sheriff Dawson cleared his throat, clearly trying to regain some control of the situation. Mr. Voss, perhaps this family discussion should happen somewhere more private. Adrian raised one hand, and Dawson fell silent. The power dynamic was crystal clear. Sheriff's badge or not, Adrian Voss was the one in charge here. Adrian's eyes never left his son. You're right. I didn't notice fast enough. I failed you. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving without you. I'm not going back. Eli. I'm 17 years old and I want a normal life. I want to go to school without bodyguards. I want friends who don't know who my father is. I want to fall asleep without wondering if tomorrow's the day someone finally succeeds in killing me. The raw pain in Eli's voice made Myra's chest ache. She'd been watching this exchange in frozen silence, but now she found herself stepping forward, positioning herself slightly between father and son. Maybe, she said quietly, everyone should take a breath. Adrian's eyes finally moved to her, really seeing her for the first time. You've been sheltering my son, putting yourself at risk. His expression was unreadable. Why? Because he needed help. And because, she glanced at Eli, who was looking at her with desperate gratitude. Because everyone deserves someone in their corner. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Respect maybe, or recognition of something familiar. Then one of his men approached, urgent and low. Sir, we have a problem. The other family knows we're here. They're mobilizing. Adrian's jaw tightened. He looked at Eli, then at Mira, making a decision that clearly cost him. You both need to come with us. Now. This street, this town, it's not safe anymore. I'm not. Eli started. Your stubbornness can get you killed later. But right now, the people who tried to murder you know exactly where you are. Adrian's voice was hard but not unkind. And every second we stand here arguing is a second they have to get here first. So you can hate me in the car or you can die here proving a point. Your choice. The cold logic was inescapable. Mira saw Eli's defiance waver as fear crept back in. If I go with you, Eli said slowly, she comes too. Mira comes with us. She's in danger now because of me. Adrian nodded without hesitation. Agreed. Miss Chun. Mira-chan. Miss Chun, I apologize for dragging you into my family's troubles. But my son is right, you're a target now. Please let us keep you safe until this is resolved. Mira looked at her bakery, at the life she'd built over 16 years, and felt it slipping away. But when she looked at Eli, terrified, vulnerable, desperately hoping she'd say yes, the choice was already made. Let me grab some things. 5 minutes later, Mira was in the back of an armored SUV, sandwiched between Eli and 2 silent guards, watching Millbrook disappear in the rearview mirror. Beside her, Eli's hand found hers and squeezed once. Thank you. Ahead, Adrian Voss stared out his window, his phone already pressed to his ear, giving orders that would reshape the criminal underworld of Philadelphia. The boy was found. Now came the reckoning. The convoy drove in silence for nearly an hour, winding through back roads and highways until the suburban sprawl gave way to rolling countryside. Mira watched the landscape blur past, her mind struggling to process the surreal turn her life had taken. This morning she'd been a small-town baker. Now she was in an armored SUV surrounded by mobsters, fleeing assassins. Finally, they turned down a private road marked only by a subtle stone marker, then through iron gates that opened automatically at their approach. The estate that emerged from the tree line took Myra's breath away. A sprawling colonial mansion set against manicured lawns, with a view of distant mountains. Beautiful and isolated. The perfect hiding place. The SUVs circled the fountain in the front courtyard and stopped. Adrian's door opened first, and he stepped out with the same measured control he'd shown in town. But Mira noticed how his eyes immediately went to Eli's vehicle, tracking his son's movements with barely concealed desperation. Eli emerged slowly, his body language defensive, and deliberately avoided looking at his father. Mira followed, feeling completely out of her depth as Adrian's men dispersed around the property with practiced efficiency. "This is the Riverside estate," Adrian said, gesturing to the mansion. "It's secure. The perimeter is monitored 24/7, and my most trusted men are here. You'll both be safe." "Your most trusted men," Eli said coldly. "Like the ones who tried to kill me." The words landed like a slap. Adrian's composure faltered, genuine pain flashing across his face. "Eli, don't. Just don't." Eli turned away, wrapping his arms around himself. "Show us where we're staying." "I'm tired." Adrian looked like he wanted to say more, but he simply nodded and led them inside. The interior was as impressive as the exterior. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than Myra's entire bakery. But it felt cold, more museum than home. They were shown to adjoining rooms on the second floor. Myra's decorated in soft blues and creams, Eli's in darker masculine tones. Both were larger than her entire apartment. "There's a dining room downstairs," Adrian said from the doorway of Eli's room. "Dinner will be ready at 7. If you need anything before then." "We won't," Eli said, not turning around. Adrian stood there for a long moment, and Mira saw the mask slip completely. This wasn't a feared mafia boss. This was just a father who didn't know how to reach his son, who'd perhaps never learned how. "I'm glad you're alive," Adrian said quietly. "More than you know." Then he left, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like defeat. Eli immediately sank onto the bed, his head in his hands. Mira sat beside him, giving him space but staying close. "That was harsh," she said gently. "He deserves harsh." "Maybe. But he also just mobilized 50 men and drove 4 hours because he thought you were alive. That's not nothing." Eli looked up at her, his eyes red. "You don't understand what it's like. Growing up in his shadow, watching him hurt people, knowing that one day I'm supposed to become him. He's never asked what I want. Never considered that maybe I don't want this life." "Have you told him that?" "Why should I have to? Shouldn't he just?" "No." Mira smiled sadly. "Parents aren't mind readers, Eli. Even scary mafia boss parents. If you want him to understand, you have to tell him. What if he doesn't care? What if he does?" Before Eli could respond, there was a knock on the door. One of Adrian's men, younger than the others with kind eyes, stepped in carrying fresh clothes. "Mr. Voss thought you might want to change," he said, setting them on the dresser. "And Miss Chan, there are clothes for you in your room as well. If the sizes are wrong, just let me know." "Thank you," Mira said. "What's your name?" "Marcus, ma'am." "How long have you worked for Adrian?" Marcus smiled slightly. "Since I was 18. Mr. Voss gave me a job when no one else would. He's a good man despite what people think, especially when it comes to Eli." Eli scoffed, but Marcus continued, his voice earnest. The day you went missing, I've never seen him like that. He tore through the organization like a hurricane. Didn't sleep, barely ate. Every resource, every contact, everything went into finding you. When we finally got word you might be in Millbrook, he didn't even wait for confirmation. Just got in the car and drove. He should have been watching me in the first place, Eli muttered. Maybe. But he was trying to give you space. You've been fighting more, pushing back against the security, the restrictions. He thought if he loosened the leash a little, you'd feel less trapped. Marcus's expression was sympathetic. He's not perfect, but he loves you more than anything in this world. After Marcus left, the room fell into heavy silence. Mira could see Eli processing this new information, his anger warring with the longing for connection that every teenager has with their parent. I should rest, Eli finally said. You should too. Mira nodded and retreated to her own room, but sleep felt impossible. Instead, she showered and changed into the surprisingly well-fitting clothes that had been left for her. Simple jeans and a soft sweater. Someone had paid attention to details. At 7 p.m. there was a soft knock on her door. It was Marcus again. Dinner's ready if you'd like to join us. Downstairs, the dining room was intimate despite its size. A long mahogany table set for 3 at one end, candles flickering softly. Adrian stood by the window, staring out at the darkening grounds, but turned when they entered. His eyes went immediately to the empty space beside Mira. Eli's not coming. I'll try to talk to him, Mira offered, but Adrian shook his head. No. Let him have his space. Please sit. Dinner was served by quiet staff. Roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. It was delicious, but Mira barely tasted it. The tension was too thick, Adrian's grief too palpable. Thank you, he said suddenly, for protecting my son. For risking yourself when you had no reason to. Anyone would have. No, Adrian's voice was firm. They wouldn't. Most people see danger and they run. You saw my son in pain and you stepped forward. That takes courage. Mira set down her fork. Mr. Voss. Adrian, please. Adrian, your son is terrified. Not just of the people who tried to kill him, but of losing himself to this life you lead. He needs to know he has choices. That he's more than just your heir. Adrian's jaw worked. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've spent 17 years training him for a job he never applied for. The words were bold, maybe too bold, but Adrian didn't flinch. He just looked tired. My father brought me into this business when I was 12, he said quietly. Taught me that strength was everything, that showing emotion was weakness. By the time I realized I'd become exactly like him, it was too late to change. I thought if I could give Eli education opportunities, a chance to see the world, he'd understand that I was trying to give him options. But all he sees is the violence. Because that's all you show him. Because that's all I know how to be. Adrian looked at her then, and she saw the same broken expression she'd seen in Eli's eyes. I don't know how to be the father he needs. I only know how to be the father I am. Upstairs, a door opened. Footsteps on the stairs. Both Adrian and Mira turned as Eli appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain and younger than his 17 years. There's room at the table, Adrian said softly, barely breathing, as if afraid any sudden movement would scare Eli away. Eli stood there for a long moment, wrestling with something internal. Then, slowly, he walked to the table and sat down across from his father. I don't forgive you, Eli said quietly. Not yet. I know. And I'm not promising to take over your business. I might never want that. Okay. But Eli's voice cracked slightly. But I don't want to hate you either. I'm tired of being angry all the time. Adrian's eyes glistened, but he blinked rapidly, maintaining control. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Whatever you want. College, a different life, anything, we'll find a way. You mean that? I've never meant anything more. The two stared at each other across the table, Years of hurt and misunderstanding hanging between them like smoke. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. Mira quietly excused herself, sensing this moment belonged to them. As she climbed the stairs, she heard the low murmur of their voices. Adrian asking questions, Eli giving careful answers, both of them trying to bridge a gap that had seemed impossible just hours before. Maybe, just maybe, something good could come from this nightmare after all. But the night was far from over. And in the darkness beyond the estate's walls, enemies were already moving into position. The conversation between father and son stretched late into the evening. Mira could hear the low rumble of their voices from her room, punctuated by long silences that felt more comfortable than tense. Progress, she thought. Small, fragile, but real. She was about to finally fall asleep when rapid footsteps echoed in the hallway, followed by an urgent knock on Adrian's study door downstairs. Mira sat up, her heart already racing. Nothing good came from urgent knocks at midnight. She crept to her door and opened it a crack. Eli was already in the hallway, his face pale, listening. "We should stay here," Mira whispered. But Eli shook his head and moved quietly toward the stairs. After a moment's hesitation, she followed. They stopped at the top of the landing, hidden in shadow as voices rose from the study below. "Confirmed intelligence, sir. The Castellano family knows Eli is alive. They know he's here." The voice belonged to Marcus, stripped of its earlier warmth, now all business. "How?" Adrian's voice was ice. "This location is secure. We took every precaution. Someone talked. Or someone tracked us. Either way, they're mobilizing. Our sources say they're planning a move within the next 24 hours. The Castellanos." Adrian spat the name like poison. Vincent's been circling for years, waiting for an opening. He saw an opportunity with Eli and took it. "It's worse than that, sir." Another voice, now older, gravelly. "We've been analyzing the assassination attempt, going through communications, tracking movements. The attack on Eli was too coordinated, too well-timed. Someone inside gave them everything: schedules, security protocols, blind spots." A heavy silence followed. When Adrian spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. "You're saying we have a traitor?" "We're certain of it." "Do we have a name?" "Not yet. But we're close. The leak had to come from someone with high-level access. Someone you trust." Mira felt Eli tense beside her. His breathing had quickened, and she reached out to squeeze his hand. This was what he'd been afraid of all along. The confirmation that his paranoia was justified, that the danger was real and inside his father's own organization. "I want everyone vetted," Adrian said. "I don't care if they've been with me for 20 years. I want backgrounds checked, financials analyzed, communications monitored. Find me the rat." "Already underway, sir. But there's another problem." "Of course there is. The Castellanos have been asking questions in Millbrook. They know about the baker, Miss Chun. They know she helped Eli. If they can't get to him here, they might try to use her as leverage." Myra's blood ran cold. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a target. "Then she stays under our protection," Adrian said firmly. "No one touches her." "Sir, with respect, we can't protect everyone. Our resources are stretched. Maybe it would be better to." "No." The word was final. "She put herself at risk for my son when she had no reason to. That debt will be repaid. She stays protected." "That's not a discussion." Footsteps approached the study door, and Eli pulled Mira back quickly. They hurried to his room as Marcus emerged into the hallway, moving toward the security wing. Once inside with the door closed, Eli started pacing, his hands shaking. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said. "Someone inside. Someone close. How are we supposed to trust anyone? Your father will find them. What if he can't? What if the traitor is someone he'd never suspect? Someone he considers family?" Eli's voice rose. "I told you, these people are smart. They've been planning this for months, maybe years. They're not going to get caught easily." Before Mira could respond, there was a knock on the door. Both of them jumped. "It's me," Adrian's voice came through. "Can I come in?" Eli looked at Mira, who nodded encouragingly. "Yeah." Adrian entered, and immediately his eyes went to their faces, reading the situation. "You heard." "We heard," Eli confirmed. "So it's true. Someone in your organization tried to kill me." Adrian moved to the window, his shoulders heavy. For a long moment, he just stared out at the grounds, lit by security floodlights. "When you were born," he began quietly, "I held you in the hospital and made a promise that I would keep you safe, that nothing and no one would ever hurt you." He turned, and his face was etched with pain. "I've broken that promise. Someone I trusted, someone I probably broke bread with, tried to murder my son. And I didn't see it coming. Dad." Eli's voice was softer than Mira had ever heard it. "No, let me finish." Adrian's composure was cracking. "You were right about everything. I've been so focused on building the business, on maintaining power, that I stopped seeing what was right in front of me. I stopped seeing you. And it almost cost you your life." "We don't know who it is," Eli said. "It could be anyone. How do we figure out who to trust?" Adrian's expression hardened, the vulnerable father disappearing behind the calculating crime boss. "We smoke them out. If there's a traitor in my organization, they'll make a mistake. They always do. Fear makes people sloppy. What if they don't make a mistake before the Castellanos attack? Then we prepare for war." Adrian looked at both of them. "I need you both to understand something. The next few days are going to be dangerous. Very dangerous. The Castellanos won't stop until either they're destroyed or we are. And our traitor will be desperate to finish what they started before they're exposed." Mira found her voice. "What do you need us to do?" "Stay alert. Trust no one except Marcus and the 4 men I'm about to assign to your personal detail. If anyone else approaches you, even someone you've seen around the estate, you come to me immediately." He looked at Eli. "That includes people you've known for years. I know that's hard, but—" "I understand," Eli said. "I've been living with that paranoia for a week. I'm used to it." The sadness in his voice made Adrian flinch. "You shouldn't have to be. You're 17. You should be worrying about homework and dates, not assassination plots." "Yeah, well, I'm your son. This is the life you chose for me." The accusation hung in the air. But this time, Adrian didn't defend himself. He just nodded slowly, accepting the truth of it. A phone buzzed. Adrian pulled it out, read the message, and his face went pale. "What?" Mira asked. "The Castellanos aren't waiting 24 hours, his voice was tight. "Our perimeter just detected movement in the woods. Multiple heat signatures approaching from the north." "How many?" Eli whispered. "At least 20. Maybe more." Adrian was already moving to the door, speaking rapidly into his phone. "Full lockdown protocol. Get everyone to defensive positions. Now." He looked back at Eli and Mira. "Stay in this room. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Marcus. Do you understand?" "Dad, do you understand?" Adrian's voice was steel. "Yes," they both said. Adrian paused at the door, his hand on the frame, and for just a moment, he looked at his son with such raw love and fear that Mira felt like she was intruding on something private. "I won't let them hurt you," he said. "Not again. I promise." Then he was gone, and they heard him running down the hall shouting orders, the entire estate suddenly alive with urgent movement. Eli locked the door with trembling hands, then moved to the window. In the distance, Mira could see flashlight beams moving through the trees, converging on the estate like wolves circling prey. "They found us," Eli breathed. "Already. We've been here less than 12 hours and they found us." Mira pulled him away from the window. "Which means your father was right. Someone told them exactly where to look." They stared at each other as the horrifying truth settled over them like a shroud. The traitor wasn't just in Adrian's organization. The traitor was here. In this house. Right now. And outside, an army was coming to finish what they'd started. The siege of Riverside Estate had begun. The night exploded with controlled chaos. Through Eli's window, Mira watched Adrian's men move with military precision across the grounds. Some taking positions behind cover, others securing entry points, all of them armed and ready. The floodlights illuminated the manicured lawn in harsh white light, turning it into a stage for the violence to come. But the attackers never materialized. After 2 hours of tense waiting, the heat signatures in the woods retreated. No shots fired. No confrontation. Just the psychological warfare of letting them know they'd been found. Dawn broke gray and cold. Mira must have dozed off in the chair because she woke to find Eli still by the window, his face exhausted but alert. A knock on the door made them both jump. "It's Marcus." Eli opened the door. Marcus looked as tired as they felt, but his expression was grim and focused. "Meeting in the study. Mr. Voss wants you both there." Downstairs, Adrian stood over a map spread across his desk, surrounded by his top security team. His suit jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked up when they entered. "They were probing our defenses," he said without preamble. "Testing response times, mapping our positions. Classic pre-assault reconnaissance." "So they're coming back," Eli said quietly. "Without question. And next time they won't just watch." Adrian straightened. "Which is why we're not staying here." "What?" Mira asked. "But you said this place was secure." "It was. Before someone gave them the location within hours of our arrival." Adrian's jaw tightened. "The leak is worse than we thought. They're not just getting information, they're getting it in real time. Which means the traitor has direct access to my communications and movements." One of the security team, a hard-faced woman named Torres, spoke up. "We've identified 3 properties that the traitor doesn't know about. Purchased through shell companies off all official records. We can move to one of them within the hour." "The Castellanos will eventually find those too," another man argued. "We're just delaying the inevitable." "No," Adrian's voice cut through the debate. "We're buying time to identify the leak and eliminate it. Every move we make, every location we use, we're watching to see who has the knowledge and who's passing it on. Eventually, they'll expose themselves." "You're using us as bait," Eli said, not quite a question. Adrian met his son's eyes. "I'm using controlled exposure to draw out a traitor. There's a difference. Every location will be heavily fortified. You'll never be in actual danger." "You can't promise that." "No," Adrian admitted. "But it's the best option we have. If we stay here, we're sitting ducks. The Castellanos know exactly where we are. And they have time to bring in more resources, plan a better assault. If we move, we stay ahead of them." Mira felt sick. "What about Millbrook? My bakery? You said the Castellanos know about me. I've already sent a team to secure your property. And I've made it very clear through back channels that any move against you or your business will be considered an act of war against my family." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry, Miss Chun. You deserve better than being dragged into this nightmare." "Little late for apologies," Mira said, but without real anger. She was too tired for anger. "The new location is ready," Torres announced, checking her phone. 2 hours north. A farmhouse on 40 acres, good sightlines, defensible perimeter. We can leave in 15 minutes. "Do it," Adrian ordered. Then he looked at Eli. "I know this isn't what you want, but I need you to trust me. Just for a few more days, until we root out the traitor and eliminate the threat." Eli's response was quiet, measured. "I trust you to keep us alive. I'm just not sure I trust your world anymore." The words hit Adrian visibly, but he nodded. "Fair enough." The convoy that left Riverside Estate was smaller. Only 3 SUVs, trying to be less conspicuous. Mira rode with Eli again, but this time Adrian was in their vehicle, sitting across from them in silence. The tension was suffocating. They drove through back roads and small towns, the landscape gradually shifting from manicured suburbs to rural farmland. True to Torres's description, the farmhouse emerged from rolling fields, a two-story structure that looked weathered but solid, surrounded by open land that made surprise approaches nearly impossible. Inside, it was surprisingly comfortable. Someone had clearly prepared it in advance. Fully stocked kitchen, fresh linens, secure communications equipment set up in what had once been a dining room. Bedrooms upstairs, Marcus said, showing them around. Security team will be rotating in the barn and perimeter posts. Mr. Voss will be staying in the master bedroom. As they settled in, Mira found herself in a small room with a window overlooking the fields. It was peaceful in a way that felt deeply wrong given the circumstances. She should be frosting cupcakes right now, not hiding from the mob in a safe house. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Adrian stood in the doorway looking uncertain, an expression that seemed foreign on his face. "May I come in? It's your safe house. It's your room," he entered but kept his distance. "I wanted to thank you again. And to apologize. You've shown my son more kindness in 6 days than many people in his life have shown him in 17 years. Don't thank me yet," Mira said. "We're not safe." "No. But we're safer than we were." Adrian moved to the window, gazing out at the fields. "Eli told me what you said to him. About choices. About being more than what I've made him. I'm sure that was a fun conversation. It was necessary." Adrian's reflection in the window looked older, wearier. "I've spent his whole life preparing him for a throne he never wanted. I thought I was giving him power. But I was really just building him a prison. It's not too late to give him a key." Adrian turned to face her. "You really believe that? That people like me can change?" Mira thought about it honestly. "I believe people can try. Whether they succeed depends on how hard they're willing to work at it." Before Adrian could respond, rapid footsteps sounded on the stairs. Marcus appeared, his face urgent. "Sir, we have a problem. Torres just ran the deep background checks you ordered. One of them came back with anomalies." "Who?" "James Brennan. Your head of security for the past 12 years. The color drained from Adrian's face. "James? That's impossible. He's been with me since your father was alive." "I know." Sir Marcus pulled out a tablet showing financial records. "But look at this. 3 months ago, an offshore account in his wife's name received $2 million from a shell company we've traced back to the Castellano family." The room fell silent. Mira felt her stomach drop as she processed the implications. "James," Adrian repeated, his voice hollow. "He was at my son's birth. He taught Eli to drive. He stopped, anger replacing shock. Where is he? That's the other problem." Marcus's expression was grim. "He's not here. He was supposed to be part of the security detail that came with us. But he called in sick an hour before we left Riverside. And no one thought to mention this." "He's called in sick before, sir. It didn't seem suspicious until now." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. "So he knows we moved. He knows where we are. And he's probably already told the Castellanos." "Most likely, yes." Eli appeared in the doorway, having clearly heard everything. His face was white. "Uncle James? No, not him. He wouldn't." "He already has," Adrian said quietly, and the pain in his voice was devastating. "He's been selling us out for months, maybe longer. Every detail, every plan, every movement, including the information that led to your assassination attempt." The betrayal hung in the air like a physical weight. James Brennan, the man who'd been like family, who'd been trusted with everything, had sold them out for money. "How long do we have?" Mira asked quietly. Marcus checked his phone. "Hard to say. If he reported our location immediately, the Castellanos could be mobilizing now. We might have a few hours. We might have less." "Then we prepare," Adrian said, his voice hard as steel. "And this time when they come, we're ready." But as Mira looked around at the isolated farmhouse, surrounded by open fields with nowhere to hide and nowhere to run, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were exactly where the enemy wanted them. exposed, vulnerable, and running out of time. The afternoon passed in tense preparation. Adrian's men reinforced the farmhouse, boarding windows on the ground floor, setting up defensive positions in the barn, establishing clear sightlines across the fields. Mira watched from upstairs, feeling useless and trapped. Around 4 p.m. she found Eli sitting alone in the upstairs hallway, his back against the wall, knees pulled to his chest. He looked like the scared boy she'd first found behind her dumpster, not the guarded teenager he'd become. She slid down beside him without a word. "Uncle James used to take me fishing," Eli said quietly. "Every summer, just the two of us. Dad was always too busy, but James would take the whole day. We'd pack sandwiches and just talk about stupid stuff. Sports girls, what I wanted to be when I grew up." His voice cracked. "He asked me what I wanted to be. He listened. And the whole time he was planning to kill me. Maybe he wasn't. Not then. $2 million, Mira. That money was transferred 3 months ago. He's been planning this for at least that long. Every fishing trip, every birthday, every time he called me kid. It was all a lie." Mira didn't have easy comfort to offer. The betrayal was real and it was deep. "I'm sorry." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Eli spoke again, softer. "My dad's down there trying to figure out how to keep us alive. I heard him on the phone earlier. He's calling in every favor he has, moving assets, restructuring his entire security. And I've spent the last 3 years resenting him for being exactly what he is." "You had reasons." "Did I? Or was I just being a spoiled kid who didn't understand what it actually takes to survive in his world?" Eli looked at her. "I told him I wanted a normal life. But maybe there's no such thing as normal when your last name is Voss. That doesn't mean you have to accept the life he planned for you." "No. But maybe I need to stop blaming him for trying to prepare me for reality." Eli stood up slowly. "I should talk to him." "That's probably a good idea." Mira watched him walk down the stairs, his posture straightening with each step, shedding some of the weight he'd been carrying. She hoped whatever conversation was coming would help them both. She found them an hour later in the makeshift command center, standing over maps and security feeds. But the atmosphere had changed. Father and son stood close together, their body language open instead of defensive. "Here and here," Adrian was saying, pointing to positions on the map. "If they come from the north, these sightlines give us early warning. But the south is more exposed." "What about motion sensors in the tree line?" Eli suggested, leaning in to study the map. "Like the ones you have at the Philadelphia house." Adrian looked surprised, then pleased. "You remember those?" "I remember everything about security systems. I used to watch James install them." Eli's voice caught slightly on the name, but he pushed through. "He taught me a lot, actually. Before he decided to betray us." Adrian's hand found his son's shoulder, squeezing once. "Then we use what he taught you against him. Motion sensors, where would you place them?" For the next 20 minutes, Mira watched them work together, Eli contributing ideas that Adrian considered seriously, both of them occasionally disagreeing but talking through it like equals rather than parent and child. It was the first time she'd seen them as partners instead of adversaries. Marcus entered with updates, nodded approvingly at the scene, and addressed them both. "Sir Eli, we've got confirmation. The Castellanos are moving. At least 30 armed men, maybe more, heading this direction. ETA approximately 2 hours. "Good," Adrian said grimly. "Let them come. We're ready." After Marcus left, Eli turned to his father. "I need to say something." Adrian straightened, bracing himself. "Okay. I've been angry at you for a long time. For the violence, for the life you chose, for making decisions about my future without asking me. And I'm still angry about some of that. But," Eli took a breath, "but I'm starting to understand that you were doing the best you could. That maybe you didn't know how to be different because no one ever showed you how." Adrian's eyes glistened. "Eli, I'm not finished." Eli's voice was stronger now. "I don't want to take over your business. I don't want this life. But I also don't want to spend the rest of my life hating you for being who you are. So maybe we can find something in between, where I get to choose my path, and you get to be my father instead of my boss. The vulnerability in Adrian's expression was startling. I'd like that. More than anything. I need you to promise me something, though. Anything. When this is over, when we've dealt with the Castellanos and found everyone involved in the betrayal, I want out. Not completely. I'm not abandoning you. But I want to go to college. Somewhere far from Philadelphia. Somewhere I can figure out who I am without the Voss name following me everywhere. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Mira could see him wrestling with it. The father wanting to support his son's dreams, the crime boss terrified of losing control. Finally, he nodded. Okay, we'll make it happen. New identity, full security at a distance, everything you need. You get to be whoever you want to be. You mean that? I've never meant anything more. Adrian pulled his son into a hug, and Eli didn't resist. I just want you happy. And alive. Preferably both. Eli laughed wetly against his father's shoulder. Yeah, me too. They stayed like that for a moment, 17 years of distance beginning to close in a single embrace. When they pulled apart, both wiped at their eyes quickly, neither acknowledging the tears. So, Eli said, his voice steadier, how do we survive the next few hours? Together, Adrian said simply. We survive together. As evening approached, the farmhouse transformed into a fortress. Every person had a position, every contingency had been planned. Mira had been given a secure room in the center of the house with reinforced walls, along with a radio to communicate with the security team. Stay here no matter what you hear, Marcus instructed. If someone comes to this door, they need to give you the password first. It's haven like your bakery. Anyone who doesn't know that word is not on our side. What if they torture it out of someone? Then we have bigger problems. Marcus's attempt at humor fell flat. But seriously, you're safer here than anywhere else in the house. Trust the system. After he left, Mira sat on the bed, listening to the sounds of preparation through the walls. She thought about her quiet life just a week ago, about how simple everything had been. Coffee at 6 a.m., bread in the oven by 7, customers who knew her by name and whose lives she understood. Now she was in a farmhouse surrounded by armed men, waiting for a mob war to literally arrive at the doorstep. A soft knock made her jump. It's Eli. Can I come in? She opened the door. He stood there looking young and scared but also somehow older than he had that first night. I just wanted to say thank you, he said. For everything. For saving my life, for protecting me, for talking to my dad, for being the person who didn't look away when you should have. You would have done the same. I don't know if that's true. But I'd like to think it is, he smiled sadly. If something happens tonight, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, I want you to know that meeting you changed everything. You showed me that there are still good people in the world who help for no reason except that it's right. That's something I'd forgotten. Mira pulled him into a hug. This boy who'd stumbled into her life and turned it upside down. Nothing's going to happen, she repeated firmly. We're all getting through this. And then you're going to college, and your father's going to figure out how to be a better man. And I'm going back to my bakery to make overpriced cupcakes. Eli laughed against her shoulder. Deal. The radio on Myra's hip crackled to life. Marcus's voice, urgent and controlled. All positions, we have movement. South Tree Line. Multiple vehicles. They're here. Eli pulled back, fear flashing across his face. Then he squared his shoulders. I should go. Dad needs me. Eli. I'll be careful. I promise. He squeezed her hand once, then was gone, the door closing firmly behind him. Mira locked it and moved away from the window, her heart hammering. Outside she could hear engines approaching, doors slamming, voices calling orders. The siege had begun. And somewhere in the darkness, a traitor's plan was about to reach its bloody conclusion. The first shots came at dusk, just as the sun bled red across the horizon. Mira flinched at the sharp crack of gunfire, pressing herself against the interior wall of her room. The radio on her hip erupted with rapid voices. Marcus coordinating positions, Adrian giving orders, someone reporting movement on the western flank. Hold your fire until they're in range. Adrian's voice cut through the chatter, calm and commanding. Let them commit. Make every shot count. More gunfire. The sound of breaking glass. Shouting in the distance. Myra's hands shook as she gripped the radio, feeling utterly helpless. She was a baker, not a soldier. The closest she'd come to violence was cutting herself with a bread knife. Minutes felt like hours. The firefight continued, sporadic bursts followed by tense silence, then more shooting. Through her window she could see muzzle flashes in the gathering darkness, figures moving across the fields. Then Marcus's voice, urgent. They're retreating. West and south flanks pulling back. It's a feint, Adrian interrupted. Stay alert. They're probing for weak points. He was right. 10 minutes later, a concentrated assault hit the north side of the house. The sound was deafening. Automatic weapons fire, something heavy slamming against a door, men shouting orders. North entrance is holding, Torres reported. But they've got serious firepower. Some kind of battering ram. An explosion shook the entire house. Mira screamed, covering her head as dust rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered once, twice, then died, plunging everything into darkness except for emergency lighting that cast everything in blood-red shadows. They've breached the barn, someone yelled through the radio. Multiple hostiles moving toward the main house. Fall back to secondary positions, Adrian ordered. Funnel them into the kill zone. Where's Eli? East wing, sir. Safe. Keep him there. And someone check on Miss Chan. Footsteps pounded in the hallway outside Myra's room. She held her breath, pressing herself into the corner, her hand tight on the radio. The footsteps passed, followed by more gunfire closer now. Inside the house. They were inside. Her door handle rattled. Myra's heart stopped. Miss Chun. A male voice slightly muffled. Miss Chun, it's Officer Brennan. James Brennan. I'm here to evacuate you to a safer location. Officer Brennan. James. The traitor. Myra's mind raced. He didn't know she knew. He was expecting her to open the door, to trust him. The password, she called out, her voice surprisingly steady. Marcus said you need to give me the password. A pause. Haven. The password is Haven. Her blood ran cold. He knew it, which meant he'd either tortured it from someone or more likely, Marcus had given it freely. Not knowing the man he trusted was the enemy. Okay, Mira said, buying time. Just a second, the lock is stuck. She pressed the radio transmit button, whispering urgently. James Brennan is at my door. The traitor is at my door. The door exploded inward, the lock shattering under a single kick. James stood silhouetted in the doorway, a gun in his hand, his face twisted with urgency and something else, regret, maybe, or resignation. I'm sorry, he said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. You seem like a nice person. But you're a witness, and witnesses are liabilities. He raised the gun. Mira dove behind the bed as the shot went wild, hitting the wall where she'd been standing. She heard boots thundering down the hallway, voices shouting, but James was already moving into the room, his weapon tracking her. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. A body slammed into James from behind, driving him into the dresser. Eli. He'd appeared from nowhere, tackling the man who'd been like an uncle to him. 15 years of trust turned into rage-fueled strength. You bastard! Eli screamed, grabbing for the gun. You tried to kill me. You tried to kill her. James was bigger, stronger, trained. He threw Eli off, but the gun skittered across the floor. Both of them scrambled for it. Mira lunged from behind the bed, reaching the weapon first. Her hands closed around cold metal, and she pointed it at James with shaking hands. Don't move. James froze, his hand inches from Eli's throat. For a moment everyone was suspended in that tableau. Mira with the gun, Eli on the floor gasping, James calculating his odds. "You won't shoot," James said quietly. "You're not a killer, Miss Chun. I can see it in your eyes." He was right. She'd never held a gun before tonight, never wanted to. Her hands were shaking so badly she wasn't sure she could pull the trigger even if she tried. But then Adrian appeared in the doorway, his own weapon raised and steady. Behind him stood Marcus and two other guards, all armed, all aimed at James. "But I am," Adrian said coldly. "Get away from my son. Now." James slowly raised his hands, and Marcus moved in quickly to restrain him. As he was pulled to his feet, James looked at Adrian with something like pity. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the Castellanos. This isn't just about money. Then what is it about?" Adrian's voice was ice. "It's about what you've become. What you've turned this organization into." James's laugh was bitter. "Your father would be ashamed. He built an empire on loyalty and honor. You've turned it into a corporation. All profit, no principles. The old guard, we're tired of watching you destroy everything he built. So you tried to kill my son. That's honor. Eliminating your heir was never the end goal. It was the catalyst. With Eli dead, you'd have been consumed with grief, vulnerable. The organization would have fractured, and those of us who remember the old ways could have rebuilt it properly." James looked at Eli, and genuine sadness crossed his face. "I did care about you, kid. That part wasn't a lie. I just cared about the family business more." "The family business tried to murder me," Eli said, his voice hard. "There's nothing honorable about that." Marcus yanked James toward the door, but James had one more card to play. "You think catching me solves your problems? I'm not the only one. The old guard is everywhere, Adrian. We've been planning this for 2 years. And the Castellanos outside? They're just the distraction." "Distraction from what?" Adrian demanded. James smiled. "From the real assault. On your Philadelphia holdings. Right now, while your best men are here, the Castellanos are hitting every property you own in the city. Your clubs, your warehouses, your shipping operations. By morning, you'll have lost 60% of your assets. Even if you survive tonight, you're finished." The words hit like a physical blow. Adrian's face went pale as he processed the implications. He'd been outmaneuvered. They'd used his paternal instincts against him, forced him to concentrate his forces on protecting Eli, while leaving his empire vulnerable. "Take him to the basement," Adrian said quietly. "Secure him there. And get Vincent Castellano on the phone. We're ending this. Tonight." As James was dragged away, still smiling like he'd already won, the radio crackled to life. "Sir, the assault outside has stopped. They're withdrawing. All hostiles retreating to vehicles. They're leaving." Adrian and Mira exchanged glances. "It was never about taking this position," Adrian said grimly. James was right. "We were the distraction." He pulled out his phone, already dialing. "Get me damage reports from Philadelphia. All locations. I need to know exactly what we've lost." Eli stood slowly, his face pale. "Dad, I'm sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't run, if I just stayed and faced it." "No," Adrian pulled his son into a fierce embrace. "This is not on you. This is on me for not seeing the rot in my own organization. For trusting the wrong people." He pulled back, gripping Eli's shoulders. "But we're alive. You're alive. Everything else can be rebuilt." Mira sank onto the bed, the gun still in her hand, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. "Come down." Marcus gently took the weapon from her. "You did good," he said quietly. "Bought us the time we needed. I didn't do anything. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Miss Chan. It's acting despite it." He smiled slightly. "You've got more spine than half the soldiers I've served with." As Marcus left to coordinate the aftermath, Mira looked at Adrian and Eli, still standing together, father and son united by crisis. "What happens now?" she asked. Adrian's expression was grim but determined. Now we go to Philadelphia. We assess the damage. And then we make Vincent Castellano regret the day he decided to move against my family. And James. James gets justice. Not revenge, justice. He betrayed us, but he'll face it in a courtroom, not a basement. Adrian's voice was firm. I'm done with the old ways. If I'm going to keep my son in my life, I need to be better than my father was. Better than James thinks I am. Eli looked at his father with surprise and something like respect. You mean that? I do. Starting now, we do things differently. Cleaner. With actual rules and accountability, Adrian managed a tired smile. Your college fund just got a lot bigger from the legal consulting fees I'm about to need. Despite everything, the gunfire, the betrayal, the fear, Eli laughed. And in that moment, Mira saw the path forward for both of them. They would survive this. And maybe, just maybe, they'd all come out better for it. The return to Philadelphia happened in the dead of night. 3 SUVs carved through empty highways, carrying Adrian, Eli, Mira, and a reduced security team back to the city. The farmhouse had been secured. James Brennan was in federal custody. Adrian had made good on his promise to do things legally, and now it was time to face what remained of the empire. The damage was worse than anyone had anticipated. They arrived at Adrian's primary office building just after 3 a.m. to find Marcus waiting with a tablet full of reports, his face haggard. 6 warehouses hit. 3 clubs burned. The shipping operation at the docks, completely destroyed. We lost 2 men defending the East Side facility. He paused, his voice heavy. The Castellanos knew exactly where to strike and when. Every weak point, every location with minimal security. It was surgical. Adrian took the tablet, scrolling through images of destruction. Buildings reduced to rubble, inventory stolen or destroyed. Years of work obliterated in a single coordinated assault. Financial losses? He asked quietly. Conservative estimate? 70 million. Maybe more once we complete the full assessment. Eli inhaled sharply. Mira felt sick. That kind of money was incomprehensible to her. Adrian was silent for a long moment, staring at the destruction on the screen. Then he set down the tablet and looked at his assembled team. Marcus, Torres, and 3 other senior members who'd remained loyal throughout the betrayal. Vincent Castellano wanted to break me, Adrian said. He wanted me consumed with grief over my son, distracted by protecting him, while he dismantled everything I've built. And he almost succeeded. Sir, we can rebuild, Torres offered. We still have. No, Adrian's voice was firm but not angry. We're not rebuilding. Not the way it was. Everyone stared at him. I've spent 20 years building an empire the same way my father did. Through fear, through violence, through methods that kept my son awake at night and turned him into a target. James Brennan said I'd destroyed what my father built, that I'd lost the honor of the old ways. Adrian's expression hardened. He was half right. My father's ways were brutal and destructive, but I made them worse by industrializing them, by turning human suffering into spreadsheets and profit margins. Dad, Eli said quietly, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. Done with the drugs, done with the violence, done with operating outside the law. Adrian looked at each person in turn. Effective immediately, the Voss family is restructuring. Everything illegal gets shut down or sold. Everything legal gets expanded. Real estate, legitimate shipping, investment portfolios. We focus on business that won't get my son killed or my people imprisoned. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Marcus stepped forward, his expression torn between loyalty and concern. Sir, with respect, that's not how this world works. You can't just walk away from the life. The other families can adapt or fail. I don't care. Adrian's voice carried absolute authority. I'm meeting with Vincent Castellano tomorrow, and I'm going to make him an offer. What kind of offer? Torres asked warily. The kind that ends this war before more people die. Adrian pulled out his phone, already typing. He wanted to destroy my criminal empire? Fine. I'm handing it to him. Every illegal operation, every territory, every connection, he can have it all. In exchange for one thing. My family's safety and the guarantee that he never comes near my son again. You're giving him everything, Marcus said, disbelief coloring his voice. Just surrendering. I'm choosing my son over a kingdom built on blood. Adrian looked at Eli. Someone recently reminded me that I've been making decisions about the future, without asking what the people I love actually want. So I'm asking now, Eli. What do you want? Eli looked overwhelmed, tears shining in his eyes. I want you alive. I want a relationship with my father that isn't poisoned by guilt and fear. I want. His voice cracked. I want to be proud of you again. Adrian's composure finally broke. He crossed the room and pulled Eli into an embrace, his voice rough with emotion. Then that's what you'll have. I promise. Mira watched them, her throat tight. This was what redemption looked like. Not dramatic or cinematic, just a father choosing to be better because his son needed him to be. Sir, Torres said carefully, even if Castellano agrees, there are others. James wasn't working alone. He said the old guard is everywhere. How do we handle them? We expose them. All of them. Adrian released Eli but kept a hand on his shoulder. Marcus, I need you to coordinate with the FBI. We're going to give them everything, names, locations, evidence of every conspiracy against my family and my business. In exchange, we want immunity for cooperation and protection for key witnesses. You're turning on your own people, one of the other guards said, his voice hard with disapproval. I'm turning on people who tried to murder my son, Adrian corrected. There's a difference. Anyone who was part of James's conspiracy, anyone who took Castellano money, anyone who put profit over loyalty, they answer for it. Everyone else gets a choice. Adapt to the new direction or take a generous severance and walk away. No hard feelings, no retaliation. Over the next hour they worked through the logistics. Phone calls were made, meetings arranged, evidence compiled. Adrian moved with focused determination, dismantling his criminal empire with the same efficiency he'd once used to build it. Around 5 a.m. Mira found Eli alone in a conference room, staring out at the Philadelphia skyline as dawn broke over the city. You okay? She asked, sitting beside him. I think so. It's weird. A week ago I was running for my life, terrified of everything my father represented. And now he's literally destroying his entire operation to give me a different future. Eli smiled slightly. It's a lot to process. He loves you. That was never in question. I know. I never thought he'd actually change. I thought people like him, people in that world, were too far gone. Eli looked at her. You changed his mind, you know. The things you said about choices and being more than what he made me. He listened to that. He wouldn't have done any of this without you pushing him. I just told him what he needed to hear. He made the choice to listen. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun continued to rise, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. Outside, Philadelphia was waking up to a new day. Inside, a criminal empire was dying so a family could be reborn. Adrian appeared in the doorway. The meeting with Castellano is set for noon. His office, neutral ground, representatives from 3 other families as witnesses. He looked at Eli. I need you there. Why? Because this is about your future as much as mine. You should see how it ends. Eli stood, squaring his shoulders. Okay, I'll be there. And Miss Chun, Adrian continued, turning to Mira, I've arranged for a full security detail to escort you back to Millbrook. Your bakery is undamaged, we made sure of that. But I'd like to offer compensation for your time and the trauma you've endured. I don't want money, Mira said firmly. Then what do you want? She thought about it. I want you to keep your promise to Eli. Give him the normal life he deserves. And maybe, she smiled slightly, maybe visit the bakery sometime. Both of you. As customers, not as people running for their lives. Adrian's expression softened. I think we can manage that. As noon approached, they gathered for the meeting that would determine everything. The office building was in neutral territory, secured by men from multiple families, everyone armed but everyone playing by the rules of mob diplomacy. Vincent Castellano was already there. A silver-haired man in his 60s with cold eyes and an expression that suggested he'd already won. He looked surprised to see Adrian walk in calmly, Eli at his side. Adrian. And the infamous son Vincent's smile was predatory. I heard he was dead. Rumors of my death were greatly exaggerated, Eli said dryly, earning a flicker of surprise from Vincent. Adrian didn't waste time on pleasantries. He laid out the offer, every illegal operation, every territory, every asset that Vincent had tried to take by force, handed over freely in exchange for peace and safety for his family. Vincent listened, his expression unreadable. When Adrian finished, the old crime boss leaned back in his chair. You're serious? You're actually walking away? Completely. Why would I agree to this? I could just take everything anyway. You could try, Adrian said evenly. But it would cost you. More men, more money, more attention from law enforcement who are very interested in your recent activities. Or you can accept what I'm offering and rule everything I'm leaving behind with no resistance. He leaned forward. This is the smart play, Vincent. You know it. Vincent studied him for a long moment, then glanced at Eli. And the boy? He's really out. He was never in, Adrian said firmly. And he never will be. Finally Vincent nodded. Agreed. You walk away, I get your territories and your family is untouched. But Adrian, if you ever try to come back, if you ever rebuild what you're tearing down. I won't, Adrian interrupted. You have my word. And in our world that still means something. They shook hands. The deal was done. The old kingdom was dead. And a father and son finally had a chance to build something new. 3 months later, spring arrived in Millbrook with gentle warmth, and the kind of soft sunshine that made everything feel possible. Mira stood behind the counter of Sweet Haven Bakery, arranging fresh pastries in the display case, the familiar rhythm of her work like meditation. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up with her practiced customer service smile. Then she saw who it was, and the smile became genuine. Eli walked in wearing jeans and a college sweatshirt, Georgetown, where he'd been accepted for the fall semester. His face had filled out slightly, the permanent tension that had defined him 3 months ago replaced with something that looked almost like peace. Behind him came Adrian, dressed casually in slacks and a button-down, looking more relaxed than Mira had ever seen him. You came, Mira said, genuinely pleased. We promised, didn't we? Eli grinned. Besides, I've been telling everyone at school about this amazing bakery back home. Had to prove I wasn't exaggerating. Back home? Mira raised an eyebrow. I thought Georgetown was in Washington. It is. But I'm keeping an apartment here. Turns out Millbrook is growing on me. Eli glanced at his father. Plus, Dad bought a house about 20 minutes outside town. Says he likes the quiet. Adrian had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. After decades in the city, I discovered I prefer trees to traffic. Who knew? They ordered coffee and an assortment of pastries, and Mira refused their money. First visit is on the house, remember? Before joining them at a corner table during the mid-morning lull. So, she said, stirring her own coffee. How's the new life treating you both? Adrian and Eli exchanged a look, and something unspoken passed between them, the kind of communication that only came from months of actual honest conversation. It's been an adjustment, Adrian admitted. Turns out running legitimate businesses is actually harder than the alternative. More paperwork, more regulations, more boring, Eli suggested with a teasing smile. I was going to say more rewarding, but yes, occasionally more boring. Adrian took a sip of coffee. Although the shipping company is doing well, and the real estate investments are solid, turns out I'm not bad at making money when I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder for federal agents. And the families? Mira asked carefully. No trouble from that world. Vincent Castellano kept his word. He took the territories and left us alone. Some of the old guard went with him. Others, Adrian's expression darkened briefly. Others are facing trial. James Brennan pleaded guilty to conspiracy and attempted murder. He'll be in prison for at least 20 years. Eli was quiet for a moment, then spoke. I wrote him a letter. In prison. I don't know if he'll read it, but I needed to say some things. What kind of things? Mira asked gently. That I don't forgive him, but I understand why he did it. That in his twisted way, he thought he was protecting something he valued. And that I hope he finds some peace with his choices, because I found peace with mine. Eli looked at his father. Someone taught me that holding on to anger just poisons you. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go and move forward. Adrian's eyes glistened, but he blinked it away quickly. Your mother would be proud of you. Of the man you're becoming. I think she'd be proud of both of us. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Mira marveled at the transformation. 3 months ago, these two could barely be in the same room without tension crackling between them. Now they sat together like actual family, comfortable in each other's presence. What about you? Adrian asked, turning to Mira. Any excitement in Millbrook since we left? Mira laughed. Define excitement. Mrs. Patterson thinks the new traffic light on Main Street is government overreach. Tom Rodriguez finally asked out the librarian. And the whole town is invested in whether they'll make it. And someone started a rumor that my bakery was actually a mob front, which was hilarious given recent events. How did you handle that? Eli asked, grinning. I leaned into it. Started calling my chocolate croissants made men. And my cinnamon rolls the family business people thought it was hilarious. She paused. Though I did have to explain to Sheriff Dawson that I was joking. He was not amused. They all laughed and the sound was light and genuine. 3 people who'd been through hell together, finding joy in ordinary moments. The bell chimed again, and a group of teenagers tumbled in, loud and laughing. Mira excused herself to help them, and as she worked, she caught glimpses of Adrian and Eli talking quietly at their table. At one point, Adrian showed Eli something on his phone, and they both smiled. Father and son finally on the same side. After the lunch rush, as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, Eli approached the counter while Adrian took a phone call outside. I wanted to thank you again, Eli said quietly. For everything. You didn't have to help me that night. You didn't have to protect me or push my father to be better or any of it. But you did. You would have done the same, Mira said, the same thing she'd told him that first night. Maybe. But I hope if I'm ever in a position to help someone the way you helped me, I'll be brave enough to actually do it. He smiled. You changed our lives, Mira. You know that, right? You both changed your own lives. I just reminded you that change was possible. Still. Thank you. Eli glanced out the window at his father, who was gesturing animatedly while talking. He's different now. Lighter. He actually laughs at jokes. Last week we went fishing, just the 2 of us, no bodyguards, no agenda. Just fishing. It was the best day I've had in years. I'm glad, Mira said sincerely. You both deserved a fresh start. Adrian came back inside, pocketing his phone. That was Marcus. He says hello, by the way. He's running security for the shipping company now. Turns out protecting cargo is a lot less stressful than protecting people. Give him my best, Mira said. As they prepared to leave, Adrian hesitated at the door. We were thinking, if you're not busy next month, Eli's having a small graduation party. Nothing fancy, just close friends and family. We'd be honored if you'd come. Family? Mira questioned, touched. You put yourself at risk for my son when you had every reason to walk away, Adrian said simply. That makes you family in my book. Mira felt tears prick her eyes. I'd love to come. Eli hugged her goodbye. A real hug, warm and genuine, and whispered, See you soon, Mira. As they walked to their car, Mira watched through the window. Adrian said something that made Eli laugh, then ruffled his son's hair in a gesture so casually paternal it made her chest ache. Eli didn't pull away or stiffen. He just smiled and pushed his father's hand away playfully, and they both laughed as they got into the car. The bell above the door chimed as another customer entered, pulling Mira back to the present. She turned with a smile, ready to take their order, ready to continue the quiet, beautiful routine of her life. But now that quiet life held something extra. The knowledge that she'd helped save a boy's life and in doing so, had helped a father and son find their way back to each other. Some risks were worth taking. Some strangers were worth saving. And sometimes the most extraordinary thing you could do was simply be kind when someone needed it most. Outside, spring sunshine warmed Main Street. The town moved at its usual peaceful pace. And in the driver's seat of a car heading out of Millbrook, Adrian Voss glanced at his son and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 6 days. That's how long it had taken for his world to fall apart and rebuild itself into something better. 6 days that had changed everything. And it all started because one small-town baker had seen a wounded boy and decided to help. Every week after that, like clockwork, Eli would return to the bakery. Sometimes with his father, sometimes alone, sometimes with new friends from college. He'd order coffee and whatever pastry Mira recommended, and they'd talk about his classes, his dreams, his life that was finally beautifully his own. And every time the bell above the door chimed to announce his arrival, Mira would look up and smile. Because that sound, that simple, ordinary bell, had become a promise kept. A promise that no matter how dark the world got, there were still people willing to step forward and help. Still families willing to change. Still futures worth fighting for. And sometimes, all it took was one person brave enough to open their door when someone was bleeding in the rain.